Black Horse Pub. Well, good morning, and back again. It is now 9:33, and time for us to look at the front pages of the newspapers this morning. And there are very lots today. We've had so much about taxes and so on. Well, those are still in the news, but there is a few more things there, and one that isn't in the front pages, and that is there was a riot in Dublin overnight, and as in our previous program, Richard Burton expressed Richard Barton. Sorry, not Richard Burton. I know we got Richard Burton on. Back from the dead. Richard Barton commented, Dublin always seems such a lovely, quiet town, and that was my opinion of it as well. That it is just a beautiful. I mean, I've been there many, many times, and it is a quiet and decent and lovely town. And I hope that it is not the forerunner of something far more serious. But a bad scene and some deaths accruing. But the headline, the front pages are different, and none of them carry this particular tragedy because it happened very late at night and missed the deadlines, undoubtedly. But let's go through them. There's the Times. Migration figures pile pressure on the Prime Minister to act. Many of Friday's front pages lead with reaction to the revised migration figures released by the Office for National Statistics, which said net migration into the United Kingdom hit a record 745,000 people last year. The Times says Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is under pressure to implement urgent measures to control Britain's borders. A photo of Foreign Secretary Lord Cameron at Kibbutz Breri in Israel is also featured on the front pages. The 10 dogs facing extinction. That's a banner on the Daily Telegraph. But the certain breeds are dying out, and it's not that we're putting them down. But the main story is cabinet pressure on Sunak to slash migration, and we should in many ways realize that this has been mounting for quite some time, and we tend to ignore it, and we've got an issue with the boat people, that we've got an issue with people coming in and disappearing. We've got an issue with all sorts of things. Of course, we're a welcoming nation. Of course we are. But we do believe that it's got to be controlled immigration. And it's not at the moment, apparently. And the pressure is on Rishi Sunak to do something about it. The Financial Times echoes that headline, Sunak under pressure as net immigration reaches a record. inflow of 745,000 people last year. And the Tories seek a cut in overseas workers. Well, Mr. Wilders is pictured sipping champagne on the Financial Times front page. The paper's main story is also on the latest migration figures and the pressure Mr. Sunak is said to be under from within his own party. Mr. Wilder is Geert Wilders, and I'm having some difficulty reading the small print. Celebrates his victory. Is the unexpected right-wing Danish politician who's become prime minister against all the odds. And generally speaking, the news organizations say that there is a tendency swinging towards the right. I would say that it's the other way around in this country at the moment. Geert Wilder has become Prime Minister of Denmark. The cabinet battle on UK's migrant care workers. Perhaps what we should do is we should take down this photograph because that's a misnomer. Still, there is great disquiet about the issue of migrants. The Express is its front pages. Failure to halt migration is a slap in the face for the public. The Express leads with former Home Secretary Suella Braverman's characterization of the migration figures as a slap in the face for the British public. As Home Secretary, Mrs. Braverman said, Mrs. Braverman said she had called for measures including an annual cap on net migration, closing the graduate visa route, and a cap on health and social care visas. And nobody paid any attention to her. So she's looking again whiter than white and saying Rishi Sunak has done nothing. The Daily Mail, Suella leads the Tory revolt on migration. As net migration over 2 years hits a record 1.3 million, former Home Secretary describes as a slap in the face for voters the fact that nothing has been done. The Daily Mail reports that Mrs. Braverman is leading a Tory revolt over the issue. Of course, she's got political ambitions, Suella Braverman, but nonetheless, she strikes a chord with what she's saying. She strikes a chord with the British public. And poor old Rishi is taking a smack. And the Mirror is jumping even more on. They're breaking Britain. Make it stop. The economy, households are going to be 1,900 poorer. Migration, Labour, Tory policy has been a total failure. Bills, millions face a shock 5% hike in heating costs. And COVID inquiry, they made the same mistake 3 times. So it's having a real go for the second day running. The Mirror takes a swipe at the government, claiming it has failed on several key policy areas, including COVID, migration, and the economy. The paper claims that Conservatives are breaking Britain. Make it stop is its headline. The Guardian revealed how the King secretly profits from dead citizens' assets. That's a change, a switch in emphasis away from immigration. There is the King, and its headline is revealed how the King secretly profits from dead citizens' assets. And the story on its front page reports King Charles III, this is Guardian, by the way, is profiting from the assets of dead citizens who do not have a will or known next of kin. The paper says the Duchy of Lancaster, a hereditary land and property estate that generates profits for the monarch, has collected tens of millions of pounds in recent years under an antiquated system dating back to feudal times. In response to the Guardian's piece, the Duchy of Lancaster says it is a long-standing principle of UK law that property or goods cannot remain ownerless. Doesn't mean necessarily it's got to go to the king, I guess. I'm a monarchist, but he's quite well off, I think, quite well off. The metro, it shows a crane hero saves a blaze worker. It shows one of those cradles that go up the outside of a building, and it says winches from death, play on word, inches from death. Metro's front page is dominated by the striking image of a fire as a development in Reading, in the town centre, where a worker from the roof close to a burning building was lifted to safety by a crane operator. Winches from death is Metro's playful headline. Oh, here's our lovely Daily Star. Is daft boffins fear they might have accidentally created killer Terminator robots. Whoops. Yes, I said whoops. And in fact, that's what his headline says. Whoops. Whoops-a-daisy. And the Daily Star reports on claims artificial intelligence developers think Terminator-style bots might inadvertently be created, leading to a disaster which could wipe out humanity. Whoops-a-daisy, it says. Well, this has been mooted as one of the things that could very easily emanate from artificial intelligence. That killer robots, and for that matter, other killer features, could actually wipe out mankind. We could accidentally or deliberately. Remember the argument about COVID? Was it deliberate? Was the strain being developed in Chinese laboratories? Or was it a natural phenomena that we were all attacked by a flu-like bug? So if you apply the same principle to killer robots, I suppose that we could have them in our midst. The only thing is how can you disguise them? Do they look the same as us? Or will they roll out into the streets in military style and just attack everybody? Who knows? Perhaps it won't happen. I mean, when I say perhaps, I hope it won't happen. And I think that apart from the Star latching onto these stories, which they do, which has some element of truth, is they do go over the top a bit. And we have to accept the fact that I don't expect a robot to come bursting in through the front window because they say something that they don't like. But the issue is bound to rise. And I suppose really that some of these things that the Star comes up with, we do really need to keep an eye on, because many a word in jest, as they say, and we do have to be very careful. I always liken it to The Day of the Triffids. If you haven't read the novel, which is a 1950 novel, or seen the movie, which I think is a 1960s or a 1970s movie, The Day of the Triffids, so you should. And that is a movie or a story written by John Wyndham, who was a leading sci-fi writer of his day, about a plant animal that is cultivated by man because it produces oil. And then when a starburst blinds man, the Triffids seize their chance and take over. And it's terrifying the way that they actually inhabit the earth, and only noted by the hero of the book, who has actually had an eye operation and was blindfolded in hospital. So he was able to note what was going on and to lead a revolt. But not everybody is going to be blinded in hospital, or for that matter, is cared for if we have an explosion of robots. Ho, ho, ho. Now, Let's just look a little deeper into the news because it is 9:46 and we do have time. I'm just getting hold of a bit more depth to read to you. The Daily Telegraph says Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is now considering demands from within his cabinet to crack down on visas for foreign NHS and care workers after Tory MPs call for immediate and massive action to meet the party's manifesto pledge to reduce migrant numbers. Is something that they are having a great deal of problem with, and is something has got to be done. And they've been talking about doing something for the past 5 years. And I agree with Suella. They've ignored it, and now it's coming back as an explosion, and it's going to bite them in the backside. The Times reports that Mr. Jerrick's plan includes stopping students staying in the UK after their courses finish and limiting the number of family members migrants can bring in. According to the paper, Mr. Sunak could even announce measures along these lines next month. They had previously been resisted by some departments because of nervousness about the impact on the economy. But now the Treasury is so alarmed by the new figures, it's prepared to look at serious proposals to curb numbers, the paper says. As far as the Daily Mail is concerned, the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, is leading a Tory revolt after the release of the migration data, which it calls a bombshell. It highlights her social media statement on Thursday, in which she said enough is enough and urged Mr. Sunak to act now. Mrs. Braverman said the pressure the numbers put on housing, the NHS and community cohesion was unsustainable. So we have to worry a bit about not a bit, perhaps a lot, about immigration numbers. Other countries do. And whereas the idea of a selective process seems to be anathema in this country, of course, try and get into Canada, try and get into the United States, try and get into Australia, try to get into other English-speaking countries, and you will find that it is quite selective. If you can't contribute to the community and the economy, then you don't get in. And it's that simple. The Daily Express says there are fears that immigration is passing the point of no return and is now out of control. And the Daily Mirror says the Tories are breaking Britain, listing migration alongside the economy, household bills, and how the COVID pandemic was handled as areas where the government is failing. The Financial Times reports that the entrepreneur Lawrence Jones, once considered one of the most influential tech magnates in the UK, has been found guilty of raping 2 women and sexually assaulting a third. The rapes occurred in the 1990s, while the assault took place when the victim worked at Jones's web hosting company, UK Fast. The Guardian maintains that because of a system dating back to feudal times, King Charles III is able to profit from the assets of some people who die without a will or are known next of kin. Ownerless property in some parts of northern England reverts to the Duchy of Lancaster, the King's property and land estate. Funds are, claims the paper, being used to finance the renovation of property owned by the King. The Duchy says that anything left from the ownerless properties after deducting costs is given to charity. The Daily Telegraph says that senior Treasury figures have discussed holding an early budget, fueling speculation of a snap general election in the spring. Bringing the budget forward would allow more time for tax cuts to improve voters' finances before they go to the polls. But a Treasury source tells the paper, that is the Daily Telegraph, the department is still planning for a March budget as usual. So there we are. Those are the a little further look beyond the front pages. But immigration, very much the issue of the day, with 1 or 2 side issues into killer robots and a worker being rescued by a quick-thinking colleague in a building cradle when a building caught fire in Reading. For those who don't know, Reading is one of the Midland cities, and it's based on the River Thames. Okie dokie, we are it is 1951. That is 9 minutes to 10 o'clock. The date is the 24th of the 11th, 2023. And if we take a look at the weather, it's sunny intervals and a moderate breeze. At 10 o'clock today, it's only going to be 9 degrees rather. It's not going to go up from that. That's going to be as warm as it gets. And I can feel that it's a little chilly right now at 10 o'clock. It's no different. There will be sunny spells, cloud, and it's going to hit 9 degrees, and it's going to stay that way until midday. And then, believe it or not, at 1 o'clock, instead of the temperature rising, which it often does at that time of day, it's going to start to sink. It's going to go down to 8 degrees, and then at 3 this afternoon, 7 degrees. At tea time, at 5 o'clock, 5 degrees, and it'll go down, sink generally throughout the evening until at midnight. At 3 o'clock in the morning, we will get -1 degree. So quite cool on a Saturday morning. But Saturday is it's going to go from 1 degree, rising steadily throughout the morning with absolutely clear day. Clear day, lots of sun, no rain, until 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then it will hit and stop at 6 degrees and begin to drift down again until in the evening, at 9 o'clock tomorrow evening, it'll be 1 degree again. So it is cold but fine weather in the next couple of days. You can go out and not get wet, but put on your woolies when you do go out, because it is going to get cool. It is going to get cool, and I can actually feel it now, because we don't put the heating on in the Black Horse, because the first punter doesn't come in until midday, and so we sit not shivering because it's not uncomfortable, it's not unpleasant, but it's not exactly a Bondi Beach either. Right, okay, is 9:54. What we're going to do now is, well, first of all, I haven't played it for quite some time. So we're going to go down to the park, to Grange Park, which is our sort of potter's wheel. In other words, when we want to join two programs together and we don't want to go away and lose you, what we want to do is to give you just a little bit of a nice thing to watch. Here it is. Southover Grange Park. Now, you can't step anywhere in Lewes without stepping on history. And in stepping into Southover Grange Park, you step right into history. Because Southover Grange was where people called the Newtons lived in the 1500s and early 1600s. And it was the object of a group of an army of loyalists in the English Civil War who set out to capture it, because Newton was one of the people who actually was a Cromwellian. He was a Republican. He supported Cromwell and was anti-monarchist, even though later on the Prince Regent used to sneak in with his mistresses into the Grange. But it resulted in the Battle of Haywards Heath. Yes, the Battle of Haywards Heath. Most people think that Haywards Heath was a product of the railways. Not a bit of it. In the 1500s, Haywards Heath actually existed. And a little patch of ground was called Muster Green. And that's where the battle actually took place. And Muster Green is still there. As you enter Haywards Heath, there's a little triangle which separates the roads into a one-way system. And that is Muster Green, and that's where this battle took place. And it was a band from Lewis, raised in Glynde, that marched to Haywards Heath and intercepted the royalists who were setting out to capture Lewis and the key building and the key family, the Newtons, in Southover Grange. So when you step into that park and you see the Grange, which is very well preserved, you are looking at a bit of history from the English Civil War. I bet you didn't know that. And did you want to know it? Yes, of course you did. It's very important that we do know these things. Now, we look back in time, and we are now going to play you the second second part of our series, The Bloody Past, and we'll actually tell you a little bit more about the past of Lewis.
Close to the coast and open to attack from French marauders, who regularly attacked the coast. On one occasion, in the lovely scene, isn't it? Beautiful green grass, blackberry bushes surrounding the lawn. Peaceful. The chaps, gliding a bowling ball across the cropped turf. Couldn't be more pleasant. But this bowling green was originally the tilting ground for the castle. A bit like the local football club, Norman knights turned up regularly to practice cutting off ears, piercing armour with pike or sword. Or even more dramatically, they charged at one another with pointed lances, determined to knock an opponent to the ground, ready to perform the coup de grace, that last fatal plunge of the sword in the unguarded bit of flesh, the throat. Ugh, makes me feel quite faint. But the Knights of 1100 had to be honed to military perfection. Not only was there the odd disgruntled Saxon around, but even his own side could give the king a rough time. And indeed, they did. But before we go to another bloody incident on the Lewis High Street, let's stay with the tilting ground for a moment. In the 1700s, the soldiers, who had wielded their swords with such skill, discovered guns and started shooting one another. That more or less ended the fun of charging at one another with horses. And so this bit of real estate was up for grabs, and the local crown bowlers seized the opportunity in 1751 and turned tilting into bowling. But this is Lewis, remember. Nothing is ever what it seems. The horses had ploughed up the ground a bit, so the surface wasn't even. You can see the bumps and ridges across the green. So the type of bowls played on this green was different to any played through the British Isles. And 500 years later, it still is.
It goes way back to medieval times, but so far as we're concerned here, we've been playing here since 1753, and there is some evidence to suggest that in the mid-1600s there was bowls played here. And we're reputed to be the oldest sporting society in the world. Very unique, and we're unique in many respects. I mean, firstly, the woods are unique in that most of them over 100 years old. They're lignum vitae, which is very, very hard wood, and that's the reason, of course, they've survived as long as they have. The jack is biased, which is very unusual, and the green is undulating, very undulating. There's not another green anywhere in this country so far as we know, and it makes for a very fascinating but unique game, one that we can't play any other club because there aren't any that play like this. We have a membership of 50 only or 55 now, because that's all the woods we have. They're handed down from person to person. We have a championship game in the summer because we have a competition throughout the year, which is within the club. And I think the winner of that is not only our own champion, but we can consider he's world champion. As long as we can retain the green, and I think we can retain the green, as long as we can do that, there's no reason why this society shouldn't continue ad infinitum almost. It's a great Lewis establishment.
So bowling in Lewis is completely unique. And very difficult. But back to blood and guts. In the last episode, I spoke of a battle between the king and some of his barons. The king, Henry III, held the castle. Now, as you can see, the castle pokes up into the sky quite a bit. The Motter is a man-made hill. And as you can see, a few hours of overtime were put in to build this pile of dirt. From the top, you can see in every direction for miles. Almost impossible to creep up without being noticed. And there was a moat to cross as well. But it's called Castle Ditch Lane, the name reflecting its purpose all those years ago. The king, rather unsportingly, had more men on his side than the barons. But it seems he fell asleep at the switch, and on that meadow over there, Simon de Montfort drew up his troops and joined battle. Fighting was fierce. After all, they'd all been on their own tilting greens, preparing for such a showdown as this. The battle was short and sharp, and the barons put the royal troops to flight. And they showed no mercy. The priory had been used as a staging post by the king's men, and they now took refuge there. It's little wonder that tilting grounds became bowling greens, because despite all that training, the king's men panicked. Screams of terror from both monks and soldiers echoed around the priory. As burning arrows thudded into thatched roofs, setting the priory buildings afire, fighting spilled over to here, our beloved but bloody High Street. Soldiers were either massacred or crushed to death as they tried to get across the bridge over the River Ouse. For the king, it was a complete disaster.
De Montfort, he split his armies up on the hills behind us in the Chalk Downs. He split his army into three forward not flanks, but bunches of men, you know, groups. And they would have been around 1,500 people in them. So a lot of people. So he had 1,500 people. Then he kept men back for himself. So his left flank went off to Barkham and met Prince Edward, and they went off to Barkham. Prince Edward, being a hothead and chasing them all the way up to Barkham, away from the town, was one of the reasons the king's men lost. Because a lot of, and they were mounted knights. And then the other two sets came into the town and were met by the king's army and Richard of Alamaine's army on sort of the hills around us, really, because where we are now would have been outside the town.
And it was a pretty bloody war.
It was dreadful. It was absolutely dreadful. It's hard to imagine. Lewes is a little place, and on the hills around Lewes, where most of the fighting was, you know, there were tens of thousands of people trying to kill each other. And it was hand-to-hand close combat. And you didn't often die of wounds on the battlefield immediately. You were usually whacked with a broadsword and you would die of internal bleeding, or you would, have limbs severed and die slow death, or you would die death from infection, etc.
So there you go. Not quite one man, one vote, but some slight recognition that the divine right of kings isn't exactly what the Almighty had in mind.
A spark of democracy was ignited, and it happened in Lewes.
As usual, this is thirsty work, and I need to take a break. In fact, have a tipple, or perhaps go to the loos. Don't leave me, there's more blood and gore to come. Oh, Lewes, what a place!
Lewes increased in importance as the Norman occupation took hold. Not that it wasn't important before that. In Saxon times, the town had 2 mints.
And in case my pronunciation confuses you,
Those are places where coins were made, not a sweet that is eaten to try to disguise what you've been drinking. The now much larger cathedral town of Chichester only had 1 mint, which not only indicated the importance of Lewes, but started a sort of battle of popularity between the two places. The struggle for the rights to hold assizes, for example, created a tug of war that saw Chichester hold trials for a while, only for Lewes to get them back. Lewes won. The Crown Court and Lewes Assizes are still located in the modern town, and they ain't going nowhere. Mighty though the Norman castle was, it was dwarfed by the Cluniac Priory, just across this small valley. William de Warenne, who actually fought at the Battle of Hastings, was granted Lewes, along with lots of other goodies, as the spoils of war. His wife Gundrada, a religious lady, asked for and got a sponsorship to establish the priory, just 20 years after England was conquered. Henry VIII's chief vandal, Thomas Cromwell, pulled it down in 1547. Doing the bidding of the king who had fallen out with Rome over his love life. But the workmen of the 11th century were first-class masons, and some of these buildings have lasted to this day. Look at that, almost 1,000 years old. It wasn't just Henry and Thomas who were vandals. The good burghers of Lewes did their part over successive centuries, digging up the grounds and using the stones to build their garden sheds. By the time it was destroyed, the priory dominated the Lewes skyline. Its great church was immense, and the whole complex had its own hospital, dormitories, dining hall and a wharf. Boats sailed up to the priory to carry and fetch goods. How times change. This river, the Winterbourne, carried ships and barges up to the docks in the priory. Nowadays, it would barely carry a paper boat. The priory was vitally important to the local economy, bringing in goods and attracting important visitors.
The ship would have actually come very near to the edge of where the tennis courts are. That's where, because you've got the Cockshoot river or stream which fed into the Ouse, and then yes, there would have been a wharf here from which they unloaded all the stones that they used to build the priory. Because what we see now is a lot of the infill. It's like the cavity walling of the priory. The outside, the dress stone, which is now used in places like Southover Grange, came from Carr on the Isle of Wight or from Caen, so it all had to be imported. It was a significant part of the town. It started small with only 4 monks, but over the course of about 400 or 500 years, the numbers swelled. The maximum number we had was probably about 100 monks. But the church, the big church that was built in the 14th century, was bigger than Chichester Cathedral. It was massive. It would have dominated the skyline in Lewes, so it was incredibly important. And it looked both ways. It looked inland because Lewes was the mother priory for other Cluniac monasteries in the UK, and it also looked towards Europe with its mother house in Cluny. We do a lot of education work with a whole range from tiny children up to adults to get them interested in different aspects of the priory. And the trustees of Lewes Priory Trust are very keen that it's always open and free access. And it's a beautiful place that everybody can come to. They can learn about the history, they can sit in our herb garden and contemplate. And we've just started a new kitchen garden which will grow vegetables. And again, this is for the community to get involved in. So it's very much based in the community of Lewes.
But there's nothing like a bit of competition to stir the blood of a true Lewesian. And sometime in the 15th century, a big fight is recorded between the bailiffs of the town and the prior's men in a local tavern. One of the 63 pubs that once existed in the town, no doubt. The town was walled in 1275, and a fat lot of good it did. When de Montfort's troops attacked, they swept into the town with no trouble. That then caused the town's nobility to strengthen them. They remained intact from then for some centuries, when they came down to the hammers of developers as the town grew. Entry to the town was by 3 gates, north, south and west, each now remembered through the name and a few remaining stones where the wall had been. The walls may have gone, and most of the priory. But many buildings in Lewes have stood the test of time and the vandalism of kings. This church was originally a hospice attached to the priory, and this was an early hospital from the same period. And Cromwell wasn't daft enough to pull down a Tudor manor which Henry had given as part of a divorce settlement. He kept Anne of Cleves' house for himself. Within the town walls, this building has more than stood the test of time. St Michael's was the original castle church, built about 1240. It's the parish church of the town and holds both church services and musical concerts today. There is a helmet and depiction of Sir Patrick Hamilton on one of the walls. Lewes is close to the coast and open to attack from French marauders, who regularly attacked the coast. On one occasion in the 16th century, ships sailed up the Ouse far enough for them to be spotted from inside the town. This noble knight depicted here was renowned for his courage in seeing them off. Later, revolutionary Tom Paine was married here before decamping to the Americas. And its spiral tower is one of the few surviving in the UK.
Before we disappear into the folds of one of Lewis's hostelries,
there's one more legacy from Henry's break with Rome. His successor Queen Mary wanted to restore the Roman Church to England, and she was very vicious towards dissenters. 17 people who refused to give up their beliefs or had read the Bible in English were seized and thrown into a dungeon in Lewes. In November 1545, they were marched up these stairs out to a stake and put in tar barrels. Burning to death in that way was a very horrible way to die. One more chapter in the bloody Lewes High Street saga. This act of savagery has not been lost in the mists of time, however. The 17 martyrs, as they're known, are remembered on November the 5th in the biggest bonfire ceremonies of any Guy Fawkes night in the world. 7 bonfire societies stage a joint procession through the town, torches blazing, effigies of Guy Fawkes and of so-called enemies of bonfire, those who have behaved badly in the year, pulled on carriages stuffed with fireworks. It's a colourful and impressive procession, but with an underlying commemoration of the 17 dead. The parade stops at the town's war memorial for the laying of wreaths to the fallen. Prayers are said. Banners extolling the names of the martyrs are held high. And rousers, or better known to us as bangers, are freely thrown around as the people march. It's a colourful parade.
and I feel underdressed, with just one of my hats to show off. But bonfire, as it's known locally, is not the only memory of Bloody Lewes.
It suffered a far worse fate from a hidden foe, the Black Death.
On Bloody Red to Deadly Black. Next episode, how rats destroyed a major port and brought more historical carnage to Lewes. Until then, a bloody goodbye. Poor old Lewes. I need a drink.
Well, there we are. A little bit more of a Lewes history, and I hope you're finding it interesting. We started way back when Alfred the Great named this town, or at least gave it its market charter in 800 AD as part of his Saxon development, Anglo-Saxon development, which prior to the Norman invasion also lasted for 300 or 400 years and resulted in great advances in civilization during the time of Saxons and post-Roman Britain. Now, I'm going to take a minute or two. First of all, what we'll do is we will call up Melissa so that she can join us and let us know what's happening with food, glorious food in the United States, because it's Thanksgiving time, and it's always interesting to know when other people are having festivals. And really, Christmas, notwithstanding, is we now I'm going to actually stop that process, because I may just not have done the right thing. It's always difficult sometimes when you're playing around with these things. It's to actually remember exactly what it is that you've done. And so I'm going to redo it just to be on the safe side before I tell you what happened at the Black Horse last night, because it's a very interesting and important thing to know for those of you who like a decent pub and a decent tipple and the comforts of home. And just give me a moment, and I will tell you. There's a new menu at the Black Horse, and I was invited, along with a few other key people, to have a little tasting of the new menu last night, and delicious it is. And Declan was there, the pub landlord was there to oversee the tasting, and he asked a little tweak here and a little tweak there, but generally speaking, he was as satisfied with this menu, this new menu, which is now available, as the rest of us were. And I have to say that it was anticipation that I had rushed to make my booking for Sunday lunch. I normally come here for Sunday lunch, and a nice lunch it is. And somebody said to me, Keith, I don't believe you. You only have the children's lunch. I do, because at my august age, I can't finish a big one. But the children's lunch is almost as big as any other pub's main lunch. And it is a very, very nice menu on a Sunday. This is the weekday menu, and it's known as the Longhorn menu. And here it is, wings, a choice of sauce. Now, I tried the wings last night, and I am not a great curry man, but I had my fingers slapped, and I was told, now this really isn't a curry, it's a sauce. And it has in it, you can have a choice of garlic parmesan, sriracha, whatever that is, barbecue sauce, Korean barbecue, Alabama white, pineapple and habanero, hot sauce, honey mustard or buffalo sauce. So you have those on the chicken wings. And you can have them on crispy cauliflower. And I must say that I found the sauce, because I don't like anything particularly hot, I was pleasantly surprised. Some of the others wanted a bit hotter, a bit spicier. But nonetheless, I think that anybody who likes chicken wings with sauce on are going to be very pleased with that one. The burgers we had the Longhorn and the short rib on display last night. The Longhorn is 2 smashed patties. Yes, smashed patties. He smashes them. He throws them onto the grill. Bang! And thins them out. And then it's put together with applewood smoked bacon, American cheese, and aioli. Now, I am so old that some of these names don't mean anything to me, but they'll mean something to you. I don't know what aioli is, and I was too ashamed to ask. But it's what? Ah, right. There we go. So is the mayo. And anyway, the Longhorn burger was okay, but I found it a bit chewy. But then I went to the short rib, and that really pleased me. We went to the smashed patties again, 2 of them, slow cooked short rib, American cheese, and chimichurri. And once again, I don't know what chimichurri is, but it tasted damn good. So I would recommend, if you're taking my recommendation, the short rib. If you're taking Declan's recommendation, he's going to say the longhorn. But there are two more. There's fried chicken, crispy fried chicken thigh, homemade slaw, and a sauce of the choice, or the vegan patties, smoked vegan cheese, crispy onion, ketchup, and American mustard. So there you go. That's the burger range. Now we go to the main dishes. And we didn't have all of them, but let me tell you what is available. A beef short rib pie. Slow-cooked beef short rib with a thick red wine sauce, carrots, onions, and a pastry top, served with tender stem broccoli. And I must say that I'm going to look forward to trying that, although I am not going to substitute it for my Sunday lunch. That Sunday lunch is just too good to pass up for anything. Then there's wild mushroom pie. Sauteed wild mushrooms and a creamy garlic and a mustard sauce and a pastry top, served with tender stem broccoli. Tender stem broccoli is a vegetable of choice, obviously. Chicken katsu curry, crispy panko chicken with steamed white rice and katsu curry sauce. Aubergine katsu curry, crispy panko aubergine with steamed white rice and katsu sauce. Then for those who like a little touch of fish, tuna niçoise. Tuna steak served pink with a salad of red onion, soft-boiled egg, green beans, new potatoes. I've been given another, the roast. I'll read you the Sunday roast in a minute. Green beans, new potatoes, cherry tomato, and baby gem lettuce. Now, I have to tell you that all those come within the 10 to 12 pound range. So they are very, very good value. And if you're going for the wings, they are below a tenner. And the crispy cauliflower is as little as 8 pounds, just short of 9. And finally, on the main dishes during the week, fish and chips. Now, I didn't try the fish because I was so full up of everything else that I'd been fed. I just couldn't get around to it. But I did try the chips, and they are nice, thick chips. None of the stringy nonsense that you get in many places. They are good, thick, solid chips, and they taste absolutely terrific. So it's beer-battered cod with triple-cooked chips, minted garden peas, and homemade tartar sauce. And you can get sides, triple-cooked chips, creamy garlic mash, or minted garden peas. Now, here we come to my favorite, the Sunday roasts. First of all, Declan says, all of our roasts come with roast potatoes, roast parsnips, roast carrots, braised red cabbage, tender stem broccoli, sweet potato puree, and our house porter gravy. For the mains, you've got butternut squash and sage nut loaf, chicken supreme with lemon and thyme, lamb shank, the one thing I've got against the lamb shank is you can't get a small portion of that. You either have the big one or nothing at all. But the rest you can get a small portion if you're so inclined, like me, can't finish off a full Sunday roast. Sous vide sirloin, a Sussex sirloin with rosemary and garlic served with a homemade Yorkshire pudding, and that's at $17.95, and that's the most expensive thing on the menu, and it's a good steak. Porchetta, that's slow-cooked pork belly, rolled with a herb and spice stuffing with crackling and homemade Yorkshire pudding. Oh! Then sides, you've got pigs in a blanket, 5 pork chipolata sausages, wrapped in applewood smoked bacon, glazed in honey and mustard. 3 cheese cauliflower cheese, cauliflower baked in a thick 3 cheese sauce, truffled cream leeks. Oh, that sounds great. Creamy truffle leeks with white wine garlic and Italian cheese and breadcrumb crust. Now, I have to say, I think that a leek is a wonderful vegetable, and I think that it's vastly ignored on menus. So I'm delighted to see truffle creamed leeks, and that's another one I'm going to try eventually. And of course, you can get roast potatoes, all those as sides. Don't have to have the big meal if you don't want it. You can have those, or you can have those in addition to what's on the main menu. But I've been having my Sunday lunch here for some months now, and I have to say that it is a very, very satisfactory lunch for anybody. So you can get sirloin, pork belly, chicken, and for those people who are vegetarian, butternut squash and a sage nut loaf. For dessert, you've got lemon posset and a chocolate brownie, and all with homemade vanilla ice cream. I'm a sucker for ice cream. So there we are. That's here is the menu. Look for it when you get in here, and go through it carefully, because you don't want to make a quick decision. There is so much on this new menu at the Black Horse, and this is a weekday menu. And oh no, that roast, that's the Sunday menu, and you can sit in front of an open and roast roaring fire. And if you're so inclined, you can watch the footy, or you can watch the cricket. You can watch sports from all around the world. It's a very, very pleasant Sunday experience, I assure you. And the Longhorn menu, again, you've got wings of your choice, burgers, and the main dishes are beef short rib pie, wild mushroom pie, chicken katsu curry, aubergine katsu curry, tuna niswas, and fish and chips. So I do urge you to come down here on a Sunday for roast at any time of the day after 12 p.m. and you're in for a culinary treat. So the new chef is waiting to greet you. What's his name, Declan? Oh, Declan's going out of earshot. He's a lovely young man. And this morning, very early in the morning, I had a knock on the window, and I let in the staff from the kitchen, and they came. So they are slaving away to make sure you got first class food at 12 o'clock onwards and throughout the day, and at a very reasonable price, in my view. I'm so used to walking in and seeing 18 and 19 pounds for almost anything. Particularly during the week, that to see something at £9 and £10 is a treat in itself. In fact, because it tastes so good, it's an overall culinary treat. So there we go. That's in now let's just make sure that Melissa. Oh, she's having some tech problems. She's going to power down and try again. So we are waiting for her. I'll just send the link again, just in case it's the link. And in the meantime, you had a fair old dose of me this morning, because Richard and I got on to I think a whole host of different things. Two old codgers chatting away and having a good time, and we ranged on everything from the Spanish Armada getting stranded on the west coast of Ireland, and how that has affected the ethnic look of some Irish people, to bemoaning the fact that such a lovely town as Dublin was subject to what turned out to be a mini riot last night, and that was sad. But also to talking about his Scottish Terrier, and how he would nip at his heels, and then go tearing off. It sounded like a randy little bugger to me, taking off with one of the nice little young dogs from next door. I'm not sure how the neighbour took that. Richard didn't say, but don't mix that with Jazz, because he's the present collie, and a lovely dog. Jazz and I have great conversations here in the pub. That's what I really like about the Black Horse. And I think if you're a traditionalist and you like a nice, battered, local, friendly, comfortable pub, you will love the Black Horse. It is not tarted up as a lot of modern pubs are, and you think that actually you're in a sort of semi-restaurant rather than a pub. No, this has the great feeling of a pub, and I feel very comfortable in it. And the people here are regulars. They all come through the door, and Declan knows them by name, and they know him, and he has a little chat to them. And the barmaid and the bartender, they stay for quite a long time, so they're very friendly and they look after you. And the whole ambience, and particularly once the fire is lit, which is not at the moment, that fire is in another room and is behind me. But it's just a wonderful feeling, a very, very cozy pub. Incidentally, is King Richard, who took place in the Battle of Lewes, which took place in 1264. I think, yes, 1264. I've got that date right. When it turned out that the king's men were losing, he took off, and there was a windmill on the site just across the road. It now is a nice green space, but there was a windmill there, and he took refuge in the windmill, and they had to coax him out. And as one person said, "Oh, he was a coward." I don't blame him for being a coward if that's what he was, because in those days, if you got whacked with one of those broadswords, you suffered for a long time. In fact, it didn't kill you instantly. It killed you slowly, because it disrupted your innards. And now I was just talking about food, so I want to know what's on the slate for Thanksgiving. And guess who's here? Hello, Melissa.
Hello, Keith. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. And you?
Okay, I see I'm burning up today on the screen.
You are. We've got a nice fire going. Well, actually, it is a bit cool here this morning. We're entering a cool spell, but no rain, I'm happy to say. Now, what's the weather with you?
Yeah, it's moderate. I would just say it was moderate. Yesterday was very beautiful for Thanksgiving. Very beautiful day. I think I spent most of the time driving.
Yeah. Well, I actually have told everybody that it was Thanksgiving yesterday, and that you will tell us exactly what happened and what sort of food you have, because it's actually, in some ways, even more than Christmas, one of the biggest festivals you have, isn't it?
It really is. It's because it's uniquely American, and so let's see what. It's not your usual day. You know, you have the day off. Usually, not everybody does. Essential workers don't, but sadly. So turkey is supposed to be the day. The thing of the day is turkey and all the stuffing and sweet potatoes and green beans and mashed potatoes, and then all the pies that you have for dessert. Now let's see. I had no turkey at all. And I'll tell you why I didn't have any turkey, because I was driving most of the time. You know, I was driving from one friend to another friend, and these friends. So just to give you an idea of the enormity of New York State, just New York State, it took me well over an hour just to get to one friend's house, and that isn't even upstate all the way. It would take you probably 3-4 hours to get to the top of the state. So, and that's just one state. Yeah, so I drove an hour to see a friend. It's a very, oh, she's got a beautiful home. She's very sweet. The whole family's so nice and kind. Such a good family. But all I had was Italian antipasto.
Yeah.
And then I had to go and drive another hour to another friend.
Now, antipasto is a starter, isn't it? That's not even the main course.
Considered a starter. Yeah, it's just hors d'oeuvres, so to speak, you know.
Yes.
But it's always massive. It's massive. It just, And I know I'm not supposed to eat like that. I don't eat like that normally. My antipasto consists of, I don't know, a bunch of vegetables, Italian vegetables. That's what I have usually is my antipasto. But there was everything known to man on this tray. Oh my God. And I was like, I'll just have a little of this. I'm just gonna have a little of that, and then maybe I'll have a little of that, and just a pinch of that. Yeah. Before you know it, I had 3 plates. So yeah, it was.
Yes.
And I
And
did,
how
but I
many
didn't
people were there?
probably at that function about 12, and then and then when I got in the car, I didn't even have time to have dinner there, so I didn't have time to have any turkey there.
Oh
And
dear.
so then I had to go down and visit another friend, and I got there at dessert time, so I completely missed the turkey in both places.
Oh dear. But actually, I remember Connor doing a chef program on Mirador,
Yeah.
and in fact, he cooked something so that you could avoid eating turkey, didn't he?
Yeah, that was someone I know. I'm just gonna say someone I know doesn't cook well, so we eat beforehand. We eat before we get there.
Oh, that was the secret.
Yeah, so it was my cat's running around in the background.
Yeah.
He's got what we call the zoomies.
Oh, right. Now tell me, because we also did a program after one Thanksgiving in which your Italian side of the family, who are absolute characters. So remind us who they were.
Oh, there's cousin Billy, Uncle Bill, his father, Aunt Camille, Aunt Louise, cousin Elizabeth, cousin Jenny, cousin Lynn, cousin Lorraine, Cecilia, cousin Julie, cousin Gina. The list just goes on. They, I think, because were so involved in this Julie's wedding that they kept everything very simple for Thanksgiving. So I said, because they're very far away too. They're about an hour and a half away, 2 hours down
Wow.
south in South New York. I'm so New York is very vast, very vast. But yeah, so I decided I was going to see a friend of mine, a couple of friends. I
It's
was
just
just
an
going
hour
to
away.
do friends. Connor, oddly enough, is in Sweden visiting his girlfriend for the first time.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've got a Swedish girlfriend.
A
Now you
Swedish
better tell us
girlfriend.
about this. This is the first time we've heard about Connor's girlfriend.
Oh yeah, just it's there. She just seems so lovely. I haven't met her, I haven't spoken to her, but she seems very sweet and lovely, and very sweet and kind to him. So that's what you want for your child,
Where
right?
did he meet her? If she's Swedish,
What was that?
how did he meet her? If she's Swedish,
I think she was part of a like a group chat that he had with his friends, and she was on the chat, and they got to chatting
wow.
for about a year. For about a year. Yeah, see, I know all about this, Keith.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I'm meeting more people who actually have either got married or have met partners online. I'm regretting that all these years I haven't used a chat up line on you, Melissa. I see you online often enough.
Sorry, I'm taken.
I know. Do you know that's the trouble? I came onto this social media too late because everybody I talk to say, "Oh, I met online. I met online,"
Yeah,
and I'm only just catching up to the fact that you can do that.
yeah. It's everybody scoffed at it
Yeah.
until it became commonplace. They had, I think, some of them in the beginning. There were things, I guess, Match.com was the first big matchmaking site, and then they added others on, and people would scoff at it as, "Oh, it's never going to last." Well, why not? Why not? You get to know somebody. I mean, if somebody introduces you to somebody, that doesn't mean the person isn't going to be a jerk.
No,
You know?
quite.
So,
Although I have to say to you that I put up not on a social dating site, but on Facebook and YouTube, that I was looking for somebody who was gorgeous, wealthy, and could make a decent bacon sandwich, and those were the only things that I worried about, and I didn't get one reply.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
actually put my photograph with it too. That was probably the reason.
Oh, yeah, you never do that. You're supposed to put a photo of Robert Redford or go to the
well,
yeah.
no. Yes. Now, what I could have done is I could have done Harrison Ford, because I mean I wear his style of hats.
That's right. You should have done that. You should have put
I
Harrison
should.
Ford's photo. You would have
Yeah.
gotten so many requests.
But then again, you know, I'm a very considerate person. Who the hell would want to be lumbered with somebody like me as a latter-day husband? I wouldn't.
Oh, Keith.
I can get picky with myself, let alone anybody else.
You argue with yourself all day.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. As a matter of fact, it was said of Margaret Thatcher, who is that lady walking along Whitehall talking to herself? And they would say, is Margaret Thatcher holding a cabinet meeting? And now when people see me walking through Lewis talking to myself, they say, who's that? They say, that's Mr. Keith holding an executive meeting. Yes, I'm better left alone.
Well, you know what's so funny is that we make fun, and I know we just lightly joke around with people who talk to themselves. When we all talk, every single human being talks to themselves all day long. All day long. We may not vocalize it, but we're talking all day long.
What I do vocalize is pieces of television equipment which consistently go wrong. And I talk and I yell and I scream at it as if it's going to pay any attention to me. Now let's just the weather is half decent. What's happening is because of course we had our autumn statement the day before yesterday, in which the government sort of lowered taxes and so on in the hope that they'll be re-elected. I'm still getting emails from Nancy Pelosi saying, Keith, will you help me? And will you do this and will you do that? And I haven't the nerve to write back and say, dear Nancy, I'm 5,000 miles away, so I'm having some problems with it. But what's happening in your election?
I think it's all the same. I just think we don't really know. We don't know what we're doing. We honestly don't. We've got a Donald Trump or we've got Joe Biden. Here we go again. It's just absolutely dreadful. Dreadful.
The Republicans
and those who are coming forth are not serious.
Yeah.
They're not.
What happened to this guy DeSantis?
What was that?
What happened to this guy DeSantis? He was prominent.
Well, he disintegrated because he was putting forth a lot of crazy legislation in the state of Florida where he's governor. It's like people people in Florida may tolerate you. And I know people in Florida who hate him so much. But people around the country are not going to tolerate that nonsense. Yeah. They're just not. There's no way they want that kind of, it was so strict and, such a violation of personal, your personal space, your personal decisions. It's like, dude, we're not going to deal with that. We're Americans. Honestly, you really think that we're going to tolerate that for any stretch of time? It's not going to happen. And so
it was an advertisement for the sort of canvassing that goes on in an election in a free country.
Yeah, he was just so strict in his manner, and so what has happened is Trump has come in and he purposely takes more moderate positions and therefore more acceptable positions, which is what he's playing right now, because the Republicans know that with DeSantis they may lose. And so he's going to come in and save the day for the Republicans. And it doesn't matter what he says. He can come in with something more moderate and they're going to fall in line because they want to win. right?
Well, what is the view of Biden at the moment?
I got to be honest, I can't keep up with it. This. I don't know.
Yes.
Listen, anybody who's president of this country, I really sympathize with them. What a horrible job. What a horrible job. There's just no way you just can't. It's very hard to win. You can't really win. You're never going to win anybody. We're not going to win everybody over. You're just not.
Yeah, quite.
And the only thing you really can hope to do is to try to look a bit like a statesman, right? And maybe not mess everything up totally. That's really what you can aspire to.
Yeah. Tell me, is the way that polls are taken is, your phone may ring and somebody talks to you and asks a couple of views, and then they extrapolate that and turn it into thousands or millions, so they get a feel for it. How many people feel like you that the politicians have got out of touch with everything?
I would say a majority of people I know, certainly. They just and they don't feel the politicians are sincere. That's the thing. If you're a politician, you have to be a politician who doesn't care if he or she loses the next election. You're just going to do what you consider to be right for the country. And that's it. But there's nobody like that, because everybody wants to continue to have power. So you have to find somebody who says, no, I don't care. I just want to help everybody for 4 years or however long the term is, and that's it.
I think it's global. I think that politicians, our politicians, I'm famous for saying at the start of this program, 650 MPs in Parliament, and I wouldn't give you tuppence for any of them. And yesterday, on Wednesday, Stuart was in, and he keeps his ear to the ground locally. And he talked about the two candidates that we've got here to be our MP. And the one has been in power for 4 years and done virtually nothing. And the other one is such a nice guy that I can't imagine him doing anything. So we don't have much choice here. And I suspect that it's much the same around the country.
Yeah. You're just, British society, and you can please correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know. I'm not part of it. You're very polite.
Well, I don't know whether you've seen the news this morning, but there was a riot in Dublin last night.
And, a riot in Dublin?
A riot in Dublin. And Richard Barton was on first thing this morning. And he spent some time in Dublin, and I've spent some time in Dublin, and both of us agree. We always see it as a nice, calm, really pleasant city to be in, and that there should be something that triggered a riot right out of the blue, surprised and shocked us.
That means that there must be some tensions about something.
Yeah, and which I think with everything that's been going on, we haven't been paying attention to matters in Ireland the way that we do when there are a few terrorists wandering around.
So what is the issue?
The funny thing is that because of the economy, and Ireland is a small island and it struggles, it could well be the issue of poverty amongst a certain element of society.
Right.
Is Ireland does go the way that the UK goes in the main. And I think that I'm ready to admit that we have the very rich and the very poor again here. Now, the Liberals would leap to the defence and say, no, we don't have very poor people. Everybody's got various safeguards with benefits and all the rest of it. I don't buy that. I think there are a lot of people that do struggle. It's very difficult to live in a society where everybody is paying £300 for a pair of running shoes, which I wouldn't give tuppence for, and not, if you're very poor, not have the desire to have a 300 pair of running shoes to stay up with, and particularly the children. I think that some of that is creeping into our society without without the politicians, and without the do-gooders realizing it. And I think
Right.
that may be have been a trigger point.
Yeah, I
I
think
mean,
it's
yes,
that
I don't know,
Western. Yeah, I think it's this Western idea of overconsumption, and it's absolutely. I got to be honest, and I know I've certainly fallen into that many times, and I have to check myself. But what a bunch of foolishness! Sneakers. Hello, folks. Sneakers. Your whole life and image is about wearing a particular kind of sneaker.
yeah,
What? Oh, you have nothing upstairs. There's nothing upstairs. We have to
no,
stop. We have to stop. We have to look at ourselves and figure out what it really is important. Sneakers? What? For me, it's a stupid handbag. Am I, are you serious? Oh,
yeah.
I must have a designer handbag. I had to stop myself. I wanted to slap myself in the face on the street in New York.
And yet I know, strangely enough, people that I would just the same as the views on Brexit is I knew people that I admire, I like. I would say are reasonably intelligent and reasonably aware, getting all emotionally upset about things that I wouldn't give tuppence about.
Right.
And why it is, I don't know, but it seems to be something in human nature.
Yeah, you know what I think it is? I think it's, oh gosh, we can certainly get very deep on this and go down a rabbit hole now. I think it's this constant wanting for things to be better than they are right now. There's something not right. I need something more. I need something more. And it leads to such incredible just constant unhappiness, constant wanting for
Yeah.
sneakers, for stupid designer handbag, wanting because right now, right here, right now isn't good enough.
Yeah.
So when is it going to be good? I always said to myself, so when is it going to be good enough, Melissa? When you buy a designer handbag? No, because once I'm sitting there looking at the designer handbag right now, I'm not euphoric. Folks, it's all temporary happiness. It does not give you lasting happiness.
No,
It just doesn't. I don't know
it
what
doesn't.
we're all looking for. What
Yeah,
are we all looking for? To be happy, no?
absolutely. And
But
to be quite
all
honest
this
with you,
stuff does
Melissa,
not do it.
no, I'm a fairly happy character. I'm doing what I enjoy. I'm surrounded by wonderful people such as yourself, and but I actually this hat cost me £3 of a some sort of online sort of cheap clothing store. I got this jacket from eBay. I got my shirt, I think, from the charity shop. And you know something? I get more people who comment upon my hat, upon my coat, upon my handkerchief, and upon my scooter, which most people wouldn't be seen dead on. And people say, hi, hello. And they're terribly friendly. I mean, I couldn't be in a better position, and I'm broke.
So I think it is whenever we get this feeling of unhappiness or this present moment isn't good enough, we have to ask ourselves, why not? Why not?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then and I do understand. I can sit here in my comfortable little apartment with my looking at my stupid bag, and there are people out there in a war, right? And so I say to myself, can they find happiness where they are right there at
Yeah,
that present moment?
absolutely. And I
Maybe they
suppose there are
can. I don't
domestic
know.
issues, domestic situations in which people find themselves, and you would say, "Oh my goodness me!" But buying a bag or wearing trainers is not the answer.
Or even having a YouTube channel.
Yeah. Oh
It's
dear.
whatever your wants are that you don't have.
Yes.
Why are you unhappy about that?
Yes.
Why? Right?
You're quite right. Most of it isn't worth having.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true, and I think you hit the nail on the head, Keith. Is that what we have to do, regardless of whether we're in a war zone or not? We have to be able to, yes, get yourself out of danger first and foremost, certainly, but then look around and say, okay, what can I salvage? What can I look at this present moment and say, this is pretty darn good? You could be huddling with your family and say, all right, I'm with my family. I'm with my children. My children are safe with me. And find an ounce of happiness in that.
Yes.
And then what you start to do is you start to look around for more ounces of happiness that you have right here and right now without buying any nonsense, right? Even the
Well,
rich, even the wealthy, they don't have lasting happiness either. They just have more money to burn. You don't think that, oh, I got to have 10 designer handbags. Did that make you more happy?
yeah.
Well, I want another one and I'll really be happy. You know, they're humans too. They have the same problem. And if you gave a poor person $100 million, they'd have the same problem too. They would never stop wanting and
No,
not
that's
being
right.
happy though. Oh, if I have this, I'll be happy. When this happens, I'll be happy.
Well, I suppose actually those people that win the lottery, win millions, and then 5 years later there are features on them that how unhappy they are and how they've blown it and so on
Right.
and so forth.
Exactly.
That's indicative of all of us would strive to have a few million in the bank. And what happens once you've got a few million in the bank? You change, you alter, you do things differently, and suddenly you don't have a few million in the bank. And what have you got in between time? Probably a lot of grief.
And a lot of stuff and a lot of nonsense. You know, it's interesting. I had a client. Uh, he was the best. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. His name was Chuck Feeney, and he was the co-founder of Duty Free Shoppers.
All right.
And he amassed and he started it to help U.S. servicemen because he was in the Air Force, and way back many years ago, decades ago, and he recently passed away. But he amassed a fortune, about $8 billion. And he always would say, I want to see people happy while I'm living. So, and he had a foundation. He had well, I won't get into it. And he gave away $8 billion to charities because he wanted to do good with the money while he was alive. Because, he wasn't fancy. He had a small apartment with his wife. He was good to his children. He taught his children to be philanthropic. And he had a beautiful life. He didn't need that money. He didn't care. He didn't care what other people thought. He just didn't care. So he gave it to various charities, and he's happy as a clam.
Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't need all that crap. Excuse my language. I don't need all that. I just sat around and looked at my friends' places, and I was like, ugh. And then I looked at my own place and look at all this garbage. I don't need all this crap for. Really, I don't need it.
Yes.
Nonsense. It's nonsense.
Yeah.
You work all your life to buy what? To buy that? To buy sneakers?
Yes. Well, of course, one of the things about Mirador Television is that we have nobody under 50 working with us. And we all, in the main, are pretty happy people. And we carry on way after what's known as retirement age, trying hard to do what we think some people in our community would want, to listen to us, to share with us various things. And frankly, it makes me feel very satisfied that what I'm doing is a good thing for the community. It doesn't take anything out of me, and it doesn't bring me any great riches. And I don't want great riches. I do want to do something for my community, always have, and probably always have been. And that all in all, I am as happy as a clam. So it is all in all, look at a very happy man.
Good. Whenever you decide or want or feel like complaining about something, stop yourself and say, why am I complaining about this?
Absolutely.
I have to do that. I have to say to myself, stop. Why are you complaining about this? This is ridiculous. You have a beautiful life.
Yes. I mean, I must confess to a weakness is that when I look at some of our politicians and some of the people in charge of some business organizations and so on, is I can't help but thinking I've got to complain because they are so incompetent. And now that's nasty thoughts, but those I can't change. That really does, it frightens me a wee bit that we've got people who like that. What on earth are they doing in positions of authority and power when they're patently incapable of doing the job properly? But other than that, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also a matter of how are you complaining to them? Is it effective? Is it effective? Most of the time, our complaining is not effective. It's not going to do anything, and it's not going to do any good.
Thing is,
So
Melissa,
the thing is to ask yourself, how am I complaining? Is it effective, and how can I be effective?
Indeed. Well, I think that there's highlighting certain things on this program is I do see nobody admits to changing, but you see the change. So I think that our sort of complaining, which I hope is logical and based on evidence and fact, does have some merit. But by the same token, of course, is the wonderful thing that we maintain is those people who don't like hearing what we have to say can switch off.
Yes.
They have that right.
And they have the right to do that. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes. And I do remember the very first time that I went to Moscow, which would be in 1970 something, and coming back out of the airport, and we were put in the airport lounge, and the television was on, and everybody had to have the television on. You had to have it on with it, and the propaganda was coming out and so on and so forth. I'd hate to be in that situation, wouldn't you?
Oof. Yeah.
My dear, it's once again, it's the witching hour. We are at 11:05. We've been with you for half an hour, and as usual, it's always a fascinating and scintillating half an hour. And particularly since you gave us an insight, in some ways, a bit of a travelogue to do with the Thanksgiving ceremony or service or whatever, or feast today. And that is always very useful. Now, tell me, when are you leaving for overseas?
Next week.
Yeah. You're going to be here for my birthday?
When is your birthday?
Tuesday.
I'm traveling on Tuesday.
Are you?
I am. Well, and I'll check in with you if you'd like to. Why don't you give me a call Tuesday?
I will. That would be terrific. Tuesday is on. We will have a special somewhere around this time.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to make a special cup of coffee just for you.
Well, wonderful. Yeah. Perhaps we might even be daring and put a little bit of whiskey in it or something. Thanks, Melissa, as usual. For and I like the pattern of our program. We get a little feel for social America, but then we're able to get into what obviously, in many ways, are the things that are besetting governments throughout the world. So what you actually articulate in terms of the concerns that you have quite often resonate here in tiny little Lewis. And that's really what we tried to be all about and what we are all about. And it's terrific. So I really thank you for that.
I think if I could at least try to help one person out there, that'd be great.
Indeed. As we travel along, what is it? As I help somebody as I travel along, my something won't be in vain. I can't remember the words, but anyway, it's appropriate. We'll talk to you on Tuesday.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye, everybody.
Okay, Melissa in New York, a little bit about Thanksgiving, a little bit about the state of the world, and it seems that things in the United States are not that much different to things here. And the world is in a bit of a state, is in a bit of a problem. And what do we do about it? We don't know. The only thing is that what we can do is we can discuss it openly and freely without people telling us to shut up and threaten us. Because if anything is going to resolve our problems, it is freedom of speech and as able to articulate our thoughts without somebody calling us an idiot or threatening us or whatever. Open debate, free democracy. Not perfect by any means, but it is a contribution to resolving one or two evils of society at least. We will be back on Monday morning, yes we will, at 8 o'clock with the two Bs and more chats. And when the two of them are together, they slagging one another off is... well, let's slag one another off and that sort of fun. So for the moment, it's toodle pip. See you next week. Ta-ra.
From Lewis in the Black Horse Pub.